You were absent today or struggling still with the connotation and tone, I'm going to go through exactly what we did in class today. So, the first thing is to think about, obviously you don't probably have a partner right now, what these words mean: home, house, residence, and dwelling. What do they have in common, or how are they different? So you might be thinking, those aren't really the same words, Mrs. Pruitt. They're similar, but they're not the same. Well, here's the deal. Their denotation of the words home, house, residence, and dwellings all have the same basic definition, but the meaning of each word is very different. The denotation is where a person lives at any given time. So this is the part where I asked students to put their hands together. We made like our little pretend book, and then we opened it up and looked inside of it. We call it our dictionary. And we said denotation is the dictionary definition of a word. So denotation of home, house, residence, and dwellings all have the same denotation. Connotation, on the other hand, is different. A home is cozy, loving, comfortable. It's familiar. It's where you feel safe. You know the rules and expectations. Very seldomly will you feel as comfortable in somebody else's house as you do at your own home. You might have one set of grandparents where you spend a lot of time at their house, and so you know where everything is, you know what their rules and expectations are, you know whether or not you can change the channel or request that the channel's changed. You might have a different set of grandparents that when you go to their house, it's a little uncomfortable. You're not as familiar with it. Then there's house, and houses are the actual building. If you've ever gone house shopping with your parents, or you've gone to an open house, that might be somebody else's home. There might be another family that lives there that feels very comfortable. But until you buy that house and move your stuff in, it's not going to feel comfortable and familiar until you're settled and feeling safe, comfortable, and familiar with the home. Residence is another word for where somebody lives. Residence has a cold feeling. It's just, a lot of people think residence dorms, like they call them residence halls when you go away to college, or a long-term care facility, a long-term residence. You might think of old people, right? Like inside of your dorm room or nursing home room, they're going to feel comfortable. It's not the same as being at home, but it's where they live, right? And then dwelling. A lot of people thought today of the dwellings that you've been talking about in social studies, so primitive or basic surroundings. Connotation, on the other hand, so we've talked about the connotation of home, house, residence, and dwelling. So connotation, this is where I point to my head for the idea and my heart for the feeling. Connotation is the emotional, the heart, cultural, or figurative meaning or association surrounding a word. So the figurative meaning or association, that's that idea, okay? The connotation of a word can be either positive or negative. So, for example, if something doesn't cost a lot, we can call it either cheap or inexpensive. This is the denotation of the words inexpensive and cheap. It doesn't cost a lot. But which one has a positive connotation and which one has a negative connotation? If I'm selling cars, would you rather go to the cheap car dealership or the inexpensive car dealership? Would you rather buy the cheap shoes or the inexpensive shoes? Would you rather have some cheap toys or some inexpensive toys? To these questions, you should have said, I'd rather have the inexpensive kind, because cheap often makes it seem like it's been put together with parts that have poor quality, or it's maybe kind of junky. Like if you're going to a cheap car dealership, it's probably not a car that's going to last very long. Whereas you can buy an inexpensive brand new car, right? Or an inexpensive car that's going to get you down the road for quite a while. Cheap shoes, probably going to wear out quickly. Inexpensive shoes, on the other hand, well, they might be pretty decent quality, but they just don't have such a high price tag, right? Kind of like there's some generic things, and if you know what I'm talking about, you know I'm talking mac and cheese. Some generics are, pretty good. They're inexpensive versions, and others, you can tell, they're just cheap. Another one is when a teacher or parent talks tough and serious, we can call that either firm or strict. This is the denotation of the words firm and strict, that someone is talking serious and tough. So which one has a positive connotation? Which one has a negative connotation, firm or strict? Hopefully you're thinking, I'd rather have a firm teacher or parent than a strict. I don't know, maybe like strict. But in conversation today with students, and we talked about it a lot, firm is definitely a more positive connotation. If you become a parent or a teacher or a boss or an employee or anybody, you'd rather be known as being firm than being strict. So being strict, the way that it was described today by students and in conversations is that if you're strict, you're probably not going to have any wiggle room. You follow the rules, you do it their way, or you're just dead wrong. Firm, on the other hand, you have rules, you have high expectations, but there's also a little bit of wiggle room. You say, okay, I understand where you're coming from. Let's talk about it. We talked also about how, if you're a terrible employee or kind of a class clown, you might feel like your teachers are strict. Whereas if you're a good employee and a good student for the most part, you're probably going to feel like the people around you are kind of firm. They have expectations, but they understand some days we have hard times. So let's practice. This is on your packet. You're going to match up the positive connotation word with its negative connotation word. You can do this by either drawing a line or writing the letter next to the number. So on the left side, we have the positive connotation words: proper, brave, fascinating, hilarious, and smile. On the right side, we have the negative connotation: weird, outrageous, smirk, foolhardy, and snobby. Now, I know for some they're really obvious. You know what a smirk is, right? But there were some struggles today with what some of these words mean. So think about the word parts if you're struggling. Pause the video right now if you need to and make the connections. Okay, so here we go. Proper is the positive way of saying it, and the negative is snobby. You could be brave or foolhardy. If you say, wow, that was really brave that you went skydiving, versus, wow, that was really foolhardy that you went skydiving. I didn't change my tone of voice, but you can definitely tell that the way that I feel about it is not the same. Somebody might be really fascinating. Other people think she's really weird. You might think I'm really hilarious. Other people think I'm quite outrageous. In your teen years, you're going to think I'm smiling, while other people think that you are smirking. Good luck in those teen years with that one. So now I want you to look at these 4 books. They're on the next slide for you. So what does the word chicken mean in these titles? So the first one is, Are You a Chicken? A Coward's Guide to Roller Coasters. A Coward's Guide to Roller Coasters. The second one is Betty Crocker's Best Chicken Cookbook. The third one is Chicken Soup for the Teen Soul. And the last one is Story's Guide to Raising Chickens, Care Feeding Facilities. So the denotation, remember, put those hands together. Denotation, dictionary definition, is of chicken is a domestic fowl kept for its eggs and meat, especially a young one. But that's not what the word chicken means in all of those titles. So take a moment, write down a word that best describes what chicken means in each of those titles. You can write it above or below each book. Pause the video to finish that. Okay, so the first one, Are You Chicken? A Coward's Guide to Roller Coasters. I hope that you wrote down things like scaredy cat, coward, somebody who isn't as adventurous or maybe is not keen on the decisions being made. Some other answers that came out today were silly or crazy. I can't remember what the other ones were, but here's kind of what you should think about.
Brittany Griffin,
So,
your ride is
are you a
waiting.
chicken?
Brittany
If there's a
Griffin,
group
your
of
ride
friends
is waiting.
that says, if they say,
Brecken
sorry
Johnson,
about this.
Your ride is waiting. Brecken Johnson, your ride is waiting.
Okay, so are you a chicken? If you have a group of friends or a group of people that are like, hey, come and make bad decisions with us, and you're like, no, man, I'm not in the market to make bad decisions. I'm really trying to, do the right thing right now. They're not going to, when they say like, oh man, you're such a chicken, baka, baka, they're not saying, oh, you're so silly or oh, you're so crazy. They're calling you like a scaredy cat, right? The second book, Betty Crocker's Best Chicken Cookbook, is about food. It's about how to cook chicken. It's not about butchering chickens. It's not about raising chickens. It's not about anything other than the chicken's already dead. You bought it in the grocery store, and now you need to do something with it. Okay? Chicken soup for the teen soul. Well, let's think about it. When do you eat chicken soup? When you're sick, right? Okay? So Chicken Soup for the Teen Soul is real life stories by real teens. So chicken soup here, and chicken, is like healing. It's like to make you feel better. It's to help you make connections or whatever, right? And then the last one, Story's Guide to Raising Chickens, that's referring to the denotation, a domestic fowl kept for its eggs or meat, especially a young one. So in the first book title, Are You a Chicken? The connotation here is quite negative, okay? In the second one, it's pretty neutral. It's a food that you cook. In the third one, it's a pretty positive thing, right? It's something to make you feel better. And in the last one, it's pretty neutral because, again, we're talking about domestic fowl. Okay, read the following passage. This is on your paper. My grandmother is thrifty. She never throws out old clothes and saves all her jars to reuse as glasses. How would the meaning of the sentence change if the author used the word cheap instead of the word thrifty? So let's reread it. My grandmother is cheap. She never throws out old clothes and saves all her jars to reuse as glasses. Oy, that feels different. So, how would it change? A, the writer would seem unafraid. B, the grandmother would seem unknown. C, the writer would seem uncertain. Or D, the grandmother would seem ungenerous. Un, meaning not. So, take a moment if you need to, pause the video, and answer the question. So with this question, the answer would be D. The grandmother would seem ungenerous. Cheap can be a synonym of thrifty. Okay? Both of them have to do with, trying to spend less money. But its connotation is that of being ungenerous, while thrifty implies that someone is good at saving money. So if you are cheap and you invite me over for dinner, I'm not going to expect the fanciest meal in the world, right? But if you're thrifty, then you might be making some good food. I'm not sure. The next one, read the following sentence. A flock of flamingos slowly picked their way across the lawn towards the Gupta family where they stood waiting. How would the meaning of the sentence change if the author used the word mob instead of flock? A mob of flamingos slowly picked their way across the lawn towards the Gupta family where they stood waiting. I hope they don't have a toddler around. That's kind of what I'm thinking with that word. So, A, the flamingos would seem friendlier. B, the flamingos would seem more elegant. C, the flamingos would seem more indifferent. Or D, the flamingos would seem more threatening. Pause the video if you need to and circle the correct answer. The correct answer is the flamingos would seem more threatening. Mob is a synonym of flock, but it has different connotation that suggests a group of people, animals, or things that could cause danger. So how does connotation work? Well, internet users, here's 2 sentences. Internet users fool people into looking unintelligent all the time. Versus, internet trolls trick people into looking stupid online. Aye. Which one feels more positive? Which one feels more negative? The second one should be what you think is more negative. So trolls, it's a more negative word than users. Trick, more negative than fool. Stupid, more negative than unintelligent. So, tone is the author's attitude or feeling towards the audience or subject. Remember, tone, we look at dialogue and we look at descriptions. So, the internet trolls trick people into looking stupid online. Those descriptions are not good. They create a very negative tone towards the subject. So when you're looking at this, you want to ask yourself, what connotation do the words have? Why did the author choose words with these connotations instead of others? When considered together, what does this show us about the author's attitudes towards the subject? So you're going to read this poem, Making Jump Shots, and identify the tone. Pause the video, and then go on when you're ready. So the tone of Making Jump Shots is confident. Words that help with that is waltzes, floats, arc, sinks, hits the chains, silent beat, and gliding. Now read this poem, A Blessing. Pause the video. When you are ready to read the poem, find the tone and underline specific words. So, a blessing, I think reverent or loving. I know some students said admiring today. Any of those kind of words would work with this. So words to me that help create that tone are twilight bounds, darken with kindness, gladly, alone, ripple tensely, happiness, bow shyly as wet swans, love, no loneliness like theirs, hold the slender one in my arms, nuzzled, mane falls wild, caress, delicate, and blossom. So you've got 2 more questions here. Go ahead and pause the video and answer those, and then come back and we'll go through them. The first one, what is the tone? Often you feel you've done nothing when you've actually done a lot. That's because what you did seemed beneath notice. It was so small that it didn't count. But it did, just as each stitch counts towards a finished dress, each brick or nail toward a house you can live in, each mistake counts towards knowing how to do things right. So, is the tone hesitant or uncertain, encouraging or hopeful, amused or entertained? The correct answer should be encouraging, and when you look, I have highlighted in bold some of the words that help us understand that encouraging tone. Now read this one. A vaccine is a preparation of killed or weakened germs that is injected under the skin and causes the blood to produce antibodies against the disease. Effective vaccines, for instance, have been developed for smallpox, rabies, and polio. Is the tone objective, meaning unbiased? Remember, biased from argumentative. Bias means that you're picking a side. So does this pick a side, or is it unbiased, no side, not picking a side? Is it arrogant or self-important, or is it regretful or apologetic? And what words could be added or changed to change the tone of this paragraph? So, as it's written, it is objective. Words that you could add is you could say a powerful vaccine. Oh, more positive. I am for vaccines. And then produce important antibodies. Well, I am for that one too. But think about it. A lot of people were on both sides of the COVID vaccine. So how would you change the words if you were for or against? This would be a way that you could change it if you were for the vaccine. If you said an unnecessary vaccine is a preparation and you say that it may produce important or it may produce antibodies, right? Now that changes the tone of it. Okay, when you return, you will get a copy of this. This is all about a day at the beach. You'll want to read all 3 paragraphs before you start answering the questions, okay? So when you read the 3 paragraphs, you'll see that some of the words are slightly different. That should help you determine the tone and which words are helping identify that tone. If you have questions, you can see me when? Before school, between 7 and 7:45. I do not guarantee availability after school. Have a great night and let me know if you need any help.